This is the Nation's Capital Sports Show, where it's most definitely on. Welcome to this week's edition of the Nation's Capital Sports Show, where it's most definitely on. I'm Kevin Judah, hanging out with Vincent Charles, Afshin Benab, and Stephen Mangas. Gentlemen, let's get started talking about what we enjoy talking about the best and the most, and that is sports in the DMV and beyond. Let's start inside the Beltway, inside the DMV, talking about those Washington Wizards, the Cardiac Kids, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. What is the difference, Afshin Benab, from the first half of the season to the second half of the season? And recently I heard head coach Randy Whitman on an interview saying that the things that he noticed that the Wizards cannot do is complete games, keep a lead, and he said that they had lost some of their nastiness that they had in the first half, and none of that exists after the All-Star break.
No, I think he is correct when he says they lost some of their nastiness. That's a big issue. I don't think that they are playing defense very well right now. I noticed Otto Porter, for instance, out on the wing guarding someone, and he quickly turned his head, and then that player rolled all the way around under, past Marcin Gortat, and got a pass and put it in and put the bucket in, made the shot. And Gortat was yelling at Porter like, "What are you doing?" You know, they're not, I don't think they're as focused. I think that's a big issue. Their defense is a big issue. And also, and this is not an excuse, but it is a reality, the schedule at the beginning of the season was much easier than it is now. They're playing a lot more Western Conference opponents and a lot more teams in the East that are at the top rather than the bottom. So I think those are the three issues that face Randy Whitman and the Washington Wizards.
Well, this is what you get if you want to be successful in the NBA. No excuses, as you alluded to. But the biggest thing that I'm talking about in terms of the Washington Wizards, I've noticed, I meant to say, is that Randy Whitman, I've heard the pundits come out, some of our media colleagues in the media talking about, let's go ahead and fire Randy Whitman. I don't think that he's not half of the problem. I don't even think that he's 80% of the problem. All of this, Stephen Mangas, kind of relates to how the players are playing, at least in my humble opinion. But what say you, sir?
You know, I'm gonna agree on both sides. Of course, it's never always one person's problem. It's not just the head coach's problem. There's certainly been issues on the court because Whitman's not the one blowing 35-point leads to Miami. He, after scoring 40 points in the first quarter. So once again, that's your complete game, and a lot of that I think does come from the focus of the players. They have had to deal with Beal has been out a little bit and not been able to play every single game. So that has some to do with a little bit of the shakiness and the, you know, having a consistent roster. But for Whitman, a lot of it there is the way that he's coaching them to get shots and create shots, the plays is where the critique comes into play. They're taking a lot of mid-range shots and just the shots that the defense gives you, which are open. But by plan for a defense, they want to give you those shots. And those are the low percentage shots that they're getting a lot of.
Yeah, well, put it in the middle to Nene. I mean, this is what you need to do, not less. His way of thinking is that I think we have much more success in getting the ball that way because after all, they were doing that the first half of the season. But as Afshin alluded to, now they're playing tougher West Coast opponents, albeit with the exception of the Lakers, Vincent.
Some of the criticism has been they're not a three-point shooting team, and I think that has to do with the way the team is made up. Right now, the Wizards, they're going strong with Nene and Gortat underneath. Now, I agree with Whitman. I think it's a case of lack of intensity, lack of aggressiveness, not finishing plays, not encountering or countering certain plays, and they are lacking a three-point game. But you don't fire the coach right now. Well, I think it's a chemistry thing.
Here's one of the things that I'm going to have to disagree with you on in regards to Nene and in regards to Gortat. They're not even getting the ball in the middle of them. In the last 14 games of this season, at least 10 of those games, they haven't gotten the ball in the middle of them. As Steve alluded to, when you watch these games, you're thinking, where's the inside game? You got two big strong men, and you fail not to get the ball to them. Where is your inside game, and where is that nastiness?
Yeah, I think one of the differences that I see, another one within the system, is that at the beginning of the year and through up until the All-Star break, actually, Randy Whitman, his philosophy was to get it inside, then to push it out. Now, or I'm sorry, it was the other way around. Now it's actually going into Nene and Gortat and letting them push it out to the guards and letting the guards take those shots rather than giving them more opportunities to go to the basket. So it's more of a perimeter game that we see with the Washington Wizards, and I think that is not beneficial to what they can do, because I think the real strength of that team is Gortat and Nene Hilario.
True.
If you're just tuning in, you're watching the Nation's Capital Sports Show via AIM on Comcast 69 and Files 38. Vincent.
Whitman expects them to finish strong like they did last year. I'll tell you what, they're in trouble because the Wizards are 1-8 against the Raptors, the Cavaliers, and the Hawks.
And
three of the best
conference.
teams in the East.
Much more important, or in addition to that, Vincent, is that you have less than 19 games left in the season. And the Wizards actually, right now, as of this broadcast, they are 35-28, a couple of games above 500. With 19 games left, they need to win the majority of those games to make it into the playoffs. Stephen.
Well, honestly, the fact that they're in the East Coast, it makes it a lot easier for them. They can be a few games above 500 like they are now and still be in a playoff position.
Well, not at this pace that they're going now. If they continue to do this.
If they continue to lose, but if they continue to
yeah.
maintain at above 500, then it's pretty hard for them to miss the playoffs in general. But that does not, by any means, mean it's a successful season.
Well,
Especially
it's not going to be a successful season if they lose like probably 15 of these games, and that's what scares me about the Washington Wizards. Let's move on and basically say that hopefully by the time that our next show, the Wizards will be teetering into making it into the playoffs, if not limping. Let's talk about college basketball next. We're going to divide this up into two sections here. First, we're going to talk about a little bit of NCAA men basketball on the national front. We're going to talk about those Kentucky Wildcats, 31-0. I mean, they are a force to be reckoned with. Folks already, Afshin Banab, are saying, hey, let's skip the divisional playoffs. Not playoffs, but the conference games. And they're kind of wondering how the selection committee will place them at come that time. But first things first.
Yeah, I think to your point about skipping the conference tournaments, skipping the SEC conference tournament for Kentucky, no way, Jose. They better play that tournament, because 3 years ago when they won the national championship, they went undefeated into the conference tournament. And what did they do? They lost. But no matter what happens with Kentucky for the rest of the way, they will be, I believe, the overall #1 seed in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, I think they're going to maintain the #1 overall seed. Maybe they go undefeated through the conference tournament and redeem themselves for a few years ago. As their motto says right now, 31 and not done, the T-shirts they were wearing after they got the undefeated year.
Certainly a strong contender, and they certainly can. They have the ability to run the table. Don't forget, all these recruits that they get, teams like them and Duke, you know, it's kind of expected that they're going to have a good year.
Well, they should. You got Cauley Stein, you got Towns, you got some NBA-ready type 19 and 20 and 21-year-olds who are ready to jump into the NBA and play at the highest level. This is, you know, I'm not the, you know, if you talk about Calipari at Kentucky, right?
Yeah.
I'm not a Calipari fan. I don't like him as a coach. I don't like his personality, but he gets the job done at Kentucky no matter what happens. And by the way, props to Princeton, too, the 30-0 Princeton Tigers, the women, the other undefeated NCAA team in the country. So both those teams looking well. But Kevin, Kentucky is just awesome right now.
And you got to like the things that they're doing. I mean, hopefully, whenever they lose, it's actually going to be a letdown. Let's hope that it may be in tournament conference play, and then when they get to the NCAA tournament, things will be looking out for them. I share you guys' same sentiments in regards to Kentucky. How important is it that teams like Georgetown, Maryland, and Virginia have a good show in their each respective tournament play?
Well, start with Virginia first. They're the #2 team ranked nationally. They probably will get a #1 seed unless they bow out early in their ACC tournament. They've played a fantastic type of basketball with Tony Bennett. He just was announced again Coach of the Year for out of the ACC, so congratulations to him. Georgetown, they'll make the NCAA tournament. They'll need a higher seed. And the only way they get a single-digit seed, I think, is if they win the Big East tournament, which I don't know if they'll do.
My next question is, if Georgetown wins the Big East tournament, will this improve their chances in getting a favorable seed come Selection Sunday?
Yeah, I
with
think
the
they
Selection
could.
Sunday committee?
I think they could if they win it. They have to win it, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they'll
Yeah.
make the tournament.
Yeah, they're going to make the tournament, but they're going to have to win. But they have been playing strong as of late. Since the last time we talked about them, we were questioning their play, and then all of a sudden, they only lost
Boom.
one of the final 5. So
That's true.
So hopefully that's an uptick for them, and they're on a trend.
And then your third team, Maryland, they're obviously having a great year. The men and the women.
Yeah.
The women are on a roll, undefeated in Big Ten play for the women. The men, a great job with Turgeon. His first year that he's really advancing this team. I like what they're doing, and they'll probably get a decent seed as well. I don't know if they'll be a top 5, but they'll definitely be anywhere. If not a top 5, no lower than like 8 or 9.
And American University seems to be doing well as
Hey,
well. Yeah.
they won the Patriot League, or they're in the Patriot League championship. So if they beat Lafayette, American University, they get to go to the NCAAs, baby. They'll probably end up playing like Duke in the first round.
Yeah.
Speaking of Maryland, they didn't surprise me. I thought this first
Right.
year that they would contend, but they do have to do well because, even though a lot of Big Ten teams get in the NCAAs, Maryland still has to do well to.
That's a good
guarantee
point,
their
Vincent. There's only
Yes.
3 teams out of the Big Ten that are actually ranked
Right.
in the top 25 right now.
But-
Wisconsin, Ohio State, and Maryland. If Maryland wins or goes far in the Big Ten, you're going to see them get a nice seeding, and they'll deserve it too. They've had a great season
Yes.
this year.
Yes,
Yeah,
they
and
have.
what helps on their resume is the recent big win to Wisconsin, who's the other Big Ten team that's ranked high above them. So that's really their most shining moment so far in their year.
And here's the good thing I was thinking about on my way over here about Georgetown. If they get seated kind of low, because we know the experience
Yeah.
with Georgetown, if they're seated at the top, they go out
Early.
early. And so this way,
You're right.
they can get seated kind of low and they can win a couple of games. And then obviously the sky's the limit, but we'll see about that.
When they're seeded 10, 11, 12, they make the Sweet 16 almost guaranteed.
Yeah.
Georgetown, when they go in with like a 29-6 record,
Yeah.
they lose to Florida Gulf Coast in the first round. I see we only have a minute left, Kevin, but you make a great point about the Hoyas, man. We'll see what they do in the Big East
sneak up
tournament.
on you.
They will sneak up on you.
Yeah, we'll see who's going to be the sleeper in the NCAA tournament, but not so fast. We need to make it to Selection Sunday. Selection Sunday is about a week and a half away. We'll see how the Georgetown Hoyas and other local teams fare. This is the Nation's Capital Sports Show, where it's most definitely on. You can check us out on Facebook at facebook.com/TNCSS. Coming up next after the jump, we're going to be talking more sports, but this time our beloved Washington Nationals, DC United, and a little bit of
The Capitals.
the Capitals. So that is coming up next right here on the Nation's Capital Sports Show. I'm Kevin Jeter with Vincent Charles, Afshin Banab, and Stephen Mangas. This is the Nation's Capital Sports Show, where it's most definitely on. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Nation's Capital Sports Show, where it's most definitely on. You can listen to the Nation's Capital Sports Show on TuneIn Radio at tunein.com. I'm Kevin Jeter, hanging out with Vincent Charles, Afshin Banab, and Stephen Mangas. Gentlemen, let's continue our foray into the world of sports talk. Let's talk about those Washington Nationals who are hanging out in sunny side Vieira, Florida. Hope springs eternal for the 2015 Washington Nationals. They are currently 3-1. But it's spring training after all, so who really cares? Vincent.
That's right. Spring training is a time to work out the kinks. And one area where the Nationals are going to work out the kinks is situational hitting. Because of their performance, not only through the season last year, they were a productive team, but in the playoffs, they did not do any situational hitting. They weren't moving guys over like they should have, and that's one point that they're going to make this spring.
Well, let's face it, Afshin Banab. One of the things about spring training is that no one's keeping count. Spring training, basically, as you know, is basically for the veterans to come in, to work out the kinks, to work on whatever things that they need to improve. And then the second half of the game are for basically the people that the Nationals have called up to try out for the team.
Yeah, when we hear
Yeah.
in late January, pitchers and catchers report, we give them a standing ovation just for going to spring training. Which is, that's like the greatest sound. That means baseball season is ready, but it is spring. It is spring training, and it is to get those juices flowing and to just to get your juices flowing and get ready for the season. And it is a good time for those younger players who are called up to have a chance to get on that roster, you know, and this is the time, this is their time too.
Well, we do know that the late Tony Gwynn Sr., his son Tony Gwynn Jr. has been called up to, they signed him to a minor league contract.
Yeah, he's been around for a little bit, and it's nice to see that he's getting a shot here with the Washington Nationals. So I'd look forward to seeing how he does. I really hope he has a shot here.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah, it's good. You know, the Nationals have high hopes this year, right, Mr. Charles?
Yes, they do. And it's going to be interesting how things pan out because of the pitching staff and all the expectations. But it's a long season, right, Steve?
Yeah, it's a long season, but certainly a lot of the national pundits and everything calling the Nationals, you know, some of the favorites for the World Series. And, you know, even some of the guys in the own clubhouse saying that they want to stay here, you know, until they win one. Bryce Harper naming one.
He needs to, yeah.
Yeah, it's good to hear some confidence, you know, through spring training and everything else. But once again, like we said, it's spring training right now,
Because
so calm the horse.
We know what happened with Davey Johnson about 2 or 3 years ago. What did he say? World Series or bust?
That's right.
And what did Bryce Harper say at the beginning of spring training? Where's my World Series ring? Stop. Get out there and play, young fella. Get out there and play. We need a 31 home run.
And the nemesis for the Washington Nationals, as everyone has known, is to get past win the games that they're supposed to win and have that nastiness that killer instinct. So if we can have it this year, the Nationals can have it this year, I think they will be none the wiser. Let's move on to talking nationally about what's happening in Major League Baseball in terms of improving upon the game, in terms of speeding up the game. First, we're going to talk about the new MLB commissioner, Rob Manfred, took over for Bud Selig January the 25th of this year. And he's imposing this MLB announces pace of game initiatives and replay modifications. Tell us a little bit about that, Afshin.
Well, there's a number of regulations, rules and regulations that he wants to implement. And let me say at the start that some of these rules and regulations are actually in the rule books. They just never have been enforced.
Yeah.
For instance, the pitchers who must throw within 20 seconds when a player is on base. That's been in the rules forever.
Well, that's in the minor leagues.
It
was effective in the minor leagues for the 2014 season.
Right. The minor league said, okay, let us actually try it since the major leagues have it, and we don't. We'll actually put it in and see what it does. And it was very successful in the minor leagues. And now we're going to try it in the Major League Baseball.
That's right. It actually deals with from the time that the pitcher releases the ball, from the time that the batter steps in the box, from the time that the ump says go. I mean, these are changes in which could potentially speed up the game. Let me go over real quick to one of the other changes, too, that Manfred, that MLB is instituting, and that is to speed up the game during non-breaks. In other words, in between the innings. In other words, when you get from one commercial break to the other. I think those are changes that are needed within MLB. So let's go back to this time remaining activity. Going to paint this picture for you. 40 seconds from when the batter steps into the box, the PA announcer will actually the PA announces the batter and begins to play the walk-up music. 30 seconds, the pitcher's going to throw the warm-up pitch. 25 seconds, the batter's walk-up music ends. 20 seconds to 5 seconds, batter enters the batter box, and 20 seconds to the final second, pitcher begins motion to deliver the pitch. Stephen.
Yeah, and the enforcement of these isn't anything that's going to affect the game immediately at the moment. It's going to be enforced by warnings and then a fine system coming after that, which I tend to agree with. I don't think this is something, especially the first year being in it. In the first month, they won't have any enforcement whatsoever during April. But I think it's good that it's just a fine at the moment. Let's speed the game up. This is all for, you know, a viewer purpose and money purpose and the advertisers and everything else.
But you got to wonder when they finish doing their studies, how much time will this take in terms of how much time do they actually save in the game, you know?
Yeah, it's going to be, I guess it will be minimal, but it will be something. Maybe if they can get it under 3 hours, that would be kind of nice.
That's the goal.
Yeah, that is the goal, and it's also not just the pitchers, but also the hitters. Once they step into a batter's box, there's none of that David Ortiz stuff and smacking his hand and all that. And plus, you know, like you mentioned too, Kevin, the commercials, if it's a local game, then I think the commercials can be 2 minutes, 25 seconds, something like that.
I'm going to add on to this, Afshin Banoff. Rob Manfred, of course, he's the new Major League Baseball commissioner. The final thought of this is that he is talking about in the future, and he pitched this to the owners, I don't know how receptive the owners were to this, but moving games, shortening the Major League regular season from 162 to 152 games. We'll see about that. Let's move on to talking about those Washington Capitals. They are playing good. Stephen Mangas on the Golden Pond. They are one of the few Washington teams that have played with consistency. I mean, I like that. They're one of the few teams that have won in the DMV. And as of this broadcast, they're currently 38-21, 82 points. So if they continue to play as a team by winning, we're talking playoffs.
Yeah,
playoffs, man.
If they are consistent, as you said, in which they have been so far, they are talking playoffs, and they're certainly making their moves in order to make a playoff run. Right before the trade deadline, going out and acquiring Curtis Glencross from Calgary for a couple draft picks, and then going and acquiring Tim Gleason from Carolina for Jack Hillen and a couple draft picks. Both of those moves, the whole purpose there is add some experienced guys and add some gritty guys that have toughness, that fit this whole mold that Barry Trotz has brought in with this team. And so far, we've seen it's working.
Yeah, they are, in the playoffs if it started today. And let's not forget, they're also, 6 or 7 points out of actually the division lead, the Metropolitan Division, which would be really amazing considering how we were not considered, or the Washington Capitals were not considered to be leaders or contenders for the division. But they played well, and you got hats off to Trotz. And like I said before, and like we've said before, he's keeping that marriage with Ovechkin nice and sound right now.
Yeah, 44 goals leading the league right now for Ovechkin.
I think these trade deadline deals are good for the Capitals. Gleason is going to bring a physical presence, and Glencross is just going to add to those forwards. And there's a great group of forwards on this team. In fact, when Ovechkin went down the other night, Glencross immediately scores a goal.
Yeah. That is the difference between Capital teams of the past. There's people that are able to fill the gap for the veterans when they go out. I mean, you got to like what you see.
Yeah, and I've had some discussions with this too, particularly the defensive end, the depth there. You've got 3 lines of actual NHL defensemen that would go and be starters on any NHL team. And you talk about the one we didn't trade away, Mike Green. Granted, he has his faults at times on defensive play, but once again, when you consider him that he's the 5th guy, I'm all right that they didn't trade him. I'm sure that they talked. I'm sure they looked and considered their options. And when it was said and done, they wanted that offensive piece there as a 5th guy and a power play specialist too.
And not only do they got experienced forwards, older forwards, but they do have a lot of young guys too.
Yeah, they do, and they're bringing them up. And you mentioned Gleason, by the way, physical at the top, right? Glencross is going to be that same way down in front of the net, and that's what they need more than anything.
And Afshin, it's a good testament, and gentlemen, it's a good testament to the Capitals farm system. I mean, they're really, bringing up some good guys.
Yeah, they didn't trade away like a big a first or second round pick, which was really good.
The picks they traded away were middle round picks. One second round pick, I believe, was involved in the Glencross trade. But
that point Kevin made is the farm system. They had enough in the farm system, just like the Nationals. They had the guys there so they could make these deals and improve the team.
So was that GM that put that in place?
GM.
Of course I talk about George McPhee. And when he left, to his credit, George McPhee said that this team was in a good position, as we're seeing that they are. But I'm glad that still glad they made the switch and that they brought in McClellan, because McClellan did what George McPhee couldn't, and he got the pieces for the playoff run that he needed. He got the Glencross, he got the Gleason, and he went and did the signings with Orpik and Niskanen, which are the huge moves, so to really get guys above that farm system.
So, question for you guys.
Yeah.
With the way that the Capitals are set up now, are they a better team than they were last year, and are they set up to be really competitive for the 2015 season?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, short answer, yeah.
I think they are stronger than last year at this point in the season.
Look, you got the Islanders, the Penguins, the Rangers, Detroit, Boston, Montreal, and Tampa. That's who you've got to compete with. There's some teams that are trying to push into those like 6 and 7 spots in the playoffs. But the Capitals, I think they got to get between 90 and 95. They're at 81, I think you said, Kevin?
82.
82, 90 to 95. They'll definitely be in, I think. But 90 to 95 might get them a top 3 or 4 seed.
And that's exactly what we talked about at the beginning of the season, too. Yeah. We said that's what we wanted for, and that's what it's looking like we're going to get.
Plus the way Holtby's playing, along with Ovechkin scoring all those goals.
MVP.
I think they're looking
Yes.
good
MVP,
at this
Holtby.
point.
I'm going to quickly say you said better than the last 2 seasons. I'm going to say that I prefer at least the system, the setup, and everything else going as far back as Bruce Boudreau's days. Even the President's Cup winners, this team is set more for a playoff style than that team was.
And that's
as they
the
went
big
out in the
difference
first-
because
yeah.
we did not see that the last 2 seasons. And I like how the Washington Capitals are really parlaying this into success. I mean, let's hope that they are able to advance beyond that first game of the playoffs. Let's move on and talk about DC United. Bump, 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 bump. And so this is the old jersey, but the newest jersey is sponsored by Lidos, but whatever this is right here. Let's talk a little bit about DC United, Afshin Banab, and then talk a little bit about the collective bargaining agreement between MLS and the players.
Yeah.
So DC United won their season opener to start off the 2015 season. They won it 1-0 over Montreal Impact. And, 32 more games to go. And you got to kind of like the late game heroics of a great acquisition that that DC United did in Jairo Arrieta.
Yeah, he's one of their good acquisitions, especially with DC United right now coming into this year with Espindola still hurt, Pontius coming off a major injury last year. He really hasn't played, and he got to play for the first time in the first game after missing a majority of last season. Eddie Johnson with his heart condition right now. So it's nice to see one of these guys, these newer acquisitions, come up, step to the front, and get that all-important goal for the Red and Black.
And let me add this, quite a Herculean effort by the grounds crew at RFK. Got up at 5 a.m. in the morning to make sure that folks were able to see this game. It took 100 folks to remove all that snow. And additionally, the MLS season was almost not to begin,
Right.
and they were able to go and work out a collective bargaining agreement, which essentially one of the key points is free agency within the MLS. Afshin.
A myriad of issues there, gentlemen. They were able to come to almost a midnight deal. It was actually about 48 hours prior to the actual deadline where they would have called
Done
the
right in
season
the
off.
nation's capital.
Right here in the
That's
nation's
right.
capital, right? So free agency for players, there's partial free agency. There's a myriad of issues that they went over, but one of the big ones was free agency.
Starting salary,
Starting
they moved
salary.
from $36,500 and some change
Right.
up to $60,000.
Right, and you get an increase every year depending
Yes.
on how much you make and how many years you've been in MLS. But free agency, if you're at least 28 years of age, you are provided, you will have free agency if you're at least 28 years of age and played for 8 years. So those young guys that come in, like if they're 18 and 19,
Yeah.
they got to wait a long time.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
But that one is players making even $200,000, they get a 15% increase. If they make between 100 and 200K, a 25% increase. And if they make under 100, or 20% increase if they make under 100, they have as much as a 25% increase for those guys. And then, of course, the smaller salaries that you just mentioned.
Yeah.
And don't forget the TV deal. $90 million.
$90 million.
8-year deal.
That's like an MLB deal, isn't it?
triple what the contract was before.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was big for MLS, but we know that agencies or leagues such as the NFL, they trump that. That's like pocket
Yeah.
change.
That's-
And it's change.
that's like
you use
one
them,
game.
That's like
wipe your nose
changing all
with.
our pockets.
But still, it's it's a step up the ladder.
It is,
Yeah.
no, and I'm happy for him. And then you know what? It's also good for those 2 new teams that entered the league this year. And then you got these new stadiums that are still being built. We have one coming up here in D.C.
That's right.
And this is really important that they got this done. I think it's a 5-year deal.
All right, so we have 33 or 32 more games to go in the MLS season. The next game is the New York Red Bulls, and after that is the LA Galaxy.
Champions, yeah.
All right, so let's move on and conclude our show. Our email address is info@tncss.com. You can watch the Nation's Capital Sports Show on AIM via Comcast 69 and Fios 38. You can listen to the Nation's Capital Sports Show on TuneIn.com, Stitcher, and now iHeartRadio. For the TNCSS team, I'm Kevin Jeter. On behalf of Vincent Charles, Afshin Banab, and Stephen Mangas, take care and have a great day. Thank you.